It's 24 minutes to the top of the hour. That's 8 o'clock. My name is David Rukasi, and together with Rita Kanya, we're here to take you through our Tech Note conversation this morning, and we're talking about something very, very interesting.
Yes, very, very interesting. Now, yesterday was the 29th day of April 2019. I don't think I need to remind you, because for those that were waiting for the end of the month, you know.
Yeah, I think the bank has already reminded you that the end of the month is here.
Yes, that's very true. But it was also World Day for Safety and Health at Work. Now, as a country, we did recognize this under the theme Safety, Health and Future of Work, Combating Vulnerability of the Youth in the Workplace. And when you talk about vulnerability, you must have heard of mental health. It's being thrown around every single day this year and even the past years, but now more than ever, words like depression continue to be talked about and awareness about them. So we have Dr. Paul Nyende joining us this morning to talk about the mental health, the mental state, the emotional state of you as a worker. Welcome to Morning at NTV, Doctor.
Thank you, and good morning, viewers.
Now, off air, I asked you one very important question, and I'll ask it again. How important is mental health, emotional stability of someone at work?
I think it is critical that you are in a stable psychological state for you to be productive in the place of work. Quite often, if you are experiencing hostility and other emotional problems, you will not perform to your expectations. I think we all may develop physical illnesses as a result of mental disturbances.
Okay, so you say stable psychological state. What is the stable psychological state?
I think feeling a sense of discomfort, comfort, where you don't feel attacked, where you feel at peace with yourself and at peace with the environment, good working relationships with others, healthy working relationships, and just a sense of well-being.
I thought somewhere in between there you throw in a line where you say where you feel like your pay is good as well.
Oh yes, I think that is also part of it. A good pay will help you feel better because you're able to meet your needs.
Okay, Doctor, you mentioned one very important thing is that the way you feel psychologically can start to be represented physically.
Yes, sure.
That you will start to fall sick, or it would also be in the way you talk and communicate with people around you. So let's talk about that. How do you start to see the signs? What do you need to change? Because someone will say, if it's affecting me physically, I need to leave.
Yes, definitely. Once you develop mental health issues regarding stress, you may begin to show signs of physical illness. Headaches are part of that, body weakness, fatigue early morning. You wake up like you have been, beaten, or you didn't have any sleep last night, loss of appetite, and eventually you begin to feel kind of dejected. Yeah.
But I need to understand, Doctor, how bad is it really when I am not mentally stable at work? How bad can it be for me personally? Because I know most people are thinking, well, this could affect the employer more because you're not delivering. Yeah. But as a person, how bad could it get?
I think one is that you lose motivation, and I think it's very critical. We have to keep going. That drive that gets us out of bed and jump into the car and go to work can be lost, and I think it will have serious consequences on your growth and development. The physical aspects are also very important. You start feeling weak, tired. You lose interest in what is important to you, and definitely, ultimately, not only the employer suffers, but your growth and development and well-being will suffer significantly. You will change physically, and others will notice. You may age faster than you should have aged, and very many other physical conditions.
Get grey hair very fast.
Yes, surely.
That seems to be one of the...
You get silver very quickly.
But you see, Doctor, we are human beings, and we all come from, different places. We all have different issues in our lives, and it might be a little bit hard to eliminate the things that are stressing you, that are giving you that feeling that you're not psychologically fit to be in the office. You might not be able to change very many things, like because let's be honest, many people are not happy at their jobs because of their salary, but it's not a choice that I get to make of how much I get paid to be happy. So how do you move from Rita here is a pain, she's my workmate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get rid of her.
Yeah.
But I need to find a way to work within myself and with myself to get fit. But I can't ask her, Rita, you're the reason why I'm psychologically unfit to be at work today. Well, I might be able to tell her that, but that won't change anything. So how do I work with myself too?
Yes, I think some of the problems are difficult to deal with. You cannot change some of the aspects of the environment. For example, there are colleagues that you'd rather not work with, and they cause you distress, and yet they are there, permanent and pensionable. And all you need to do sometimes is to work around a situation and change yourself. If you can't change the situation, try to change yourself, accommodate the individual, make some adjustments in your thinking as well, because sometimes it's our own thinking. We may not like the way they do things, but it's not so bad after all. So making changes in yourself and learning to cope with some of the experiences is very important. Developing psychological resilience. Yes, psychological hardness or resilience, and that you don't worry too much about the challenges of life, and eventually find yourself sailing through. Of course, in other situations, you need to voice and talk about your situation. If the pay is too low at one point, you need to see.
You need to go and talk to the HR.
Yes, please. Look at my situation. I can't break through the month. So sum your voice and assert yourself, because that's also very important, that you express yourself so that you are heard and some changes are made. But some environments are toxic. They are really very hostile towards the employees within. There is a need to work together with the HR and other colleagues to try and create some change within that will be of value to all members.
Just a quick reminder, Doctor, she's a darling at work. She's just that she's next to me. So
Good to hear that.
I had to clear that because the last question sort of implied that she's a fiend.
It is okay, it is all right. But Doctor, you also mentioned one thing is where we bring in the other people at work. You can have the battle on the inside, you can try to work out that battle, but having the employers be able to know that these things are actually happening. Mental states are slowly being broken down within the workplace. And what do they do next? How do they deal with that? Now someone will say, should we have a counselor every month to just come and talk to our employees? What do we do as a boss who's perhaps listening and saying, okay, maybe I have noticed. One of them has slowly said, Slack, we see the physical bit of things are not working out. But what do they do? How do they help a person like this? Do they let them go?
I think you need to open up avenues for dialogue and allow people to express themselves. We need to take a role of counseling. If you're in management, the HR department needs to have people who are specialized in counseling so that they can support employees. You need to also look at the undercurrents within the conflicts, interpersonal conflicts and the pressures, and deal with them. You need to encourage compassion and understanding as well. We also need to listen to colleagues and employers. It is also crucial that we set up a system that information comes in and we communicate effectively so that there is no confusion, because that also generates a lot of tension. Basically, I think also we need to value the people and not just the processes, because if people feel that they are not valued and the processes are more important, I think they feel rather frustrated. Yeah.
As a psychologist, don't you think that it's one of those professions that many times people get to you when, I'm not going to say it's too late, but it's gone to the point where it's not, prevention is better than cure. It's now cure. You're trying to cure and not preventing. So as employers and employees, how do we prevent so that before we get to the cure bit, especially when it comes to situations like this?
I think psychology works at several levels, at prevention as well. So we may engage in programs like stress management programs, that is workshops within organizations to help people, learn to deal with the stress and build their resilience even before they get stressed. We also may work at a secondary level, which is intervening in people's lives before catastrophes occur. It's the early case finding where we cite a problem, somebody looks stressed, and we say, what can we do about it, and then intervene. And then, of course, in the tertiary scenario is when somebody completely breaks down and comes to office and they cannot function, and we therefore need to refer them, or they become alcoholic because of the stresses and they fail to deal with the stress, and then they need to be referred for further management. So at all those levels, so management needs to consult, especially organizational psychologists. Those are psychologists working in the workplace, psychology applied to the workplace, to build capacity in dealing with problems and making some changes that are helpful for employees.
You see, in Europe, it's sort of it's a daily thing. People go and see their psychologists every day.
Therapists.
Their therapists every single day around the corner. Let me go talk to my therapist. In Africa, it's not the culture. We have been raised to be, especially the men have been raised to be stronger, deal with their issues. The men have, the women have their circles in which neighbor A talks to neighbor B and C, and they sit down and talk. If you are a wife, you're expected to talk to your mother or Senga to help you with whatever it is that you're dealing with. In the world that we live in today, it's that society has sort of broken down.
Yeah.
But we are not yet into the habit of seeing your psychiatrist, or so how are we going to manage now? Because your office should be a lot busier than it is today. Because, for example, we had an accident in. At the roundabout at is that Old Kira Police Station?
Yeah,
That's
Kira Road Police Station.
Yes, and you see, all the people that were involved in that situation rightfully should have gone to see a therapist or should have gotten some psychological help. And that, because it is not in our system, we let those people just fly away and go. We have very many kids that are dropping out of school because they're having drug issues, or because they're not performing well in school, or we have families that are losing, let's say just one family, there's a cancer patient and that patient dies, not just being a patient, but it's their mother or father or relative, and the family has to deal with all that for some time. We're not in that culture as yet. But how do we get there?
I think, yes, you've mentioned quite an important point. The European communities have developed a supportive culture, and basically through professional, therapists. Africa, we have traditionally depended upon our extended family and friends, and that is collapsing. But this is one of the initiatives coming to television and discussing psychology. I think you have also been part of it, initiating the ideas and sharing the ideas, and people realizing that they need to come for psychological help, psychological first aid for those who have had accidents and those who have been in catastrophic events like the accident you've mentioned, for debriefing, so that they don't develop serious problems. Children who are failing to adjust, so that we don't develop delinquency, and support them through and so forth. I think slowly by slowly we are seeing more and more people coming in. We're also seeing the number of students increase in the psychology discipline, unlike in the past. It was not very popular, and we were very few at the time, but now, by that time we were about 7 in the class, but now the numbers have gone into hundreds, so we are having hundreds and hundreds of students graduate every year, which is a sign, and they're absorbed in the workforce, which is a sign that psychology is reaching out and people are recognizing the relevance of psychologists.
Don't you think that's a worry? Because if the number is rising, that means there are more people breaking down in the country.
But the thing is, if we recognize the fact that people are breaking down and we are getting more and more aware of it, we're helping with the problem. Because one thing that I have noticed, and every single time that someone says they're depressed or they're stressed, they will say, you millennials are just, you're too emotional.
You're too emotional.
They say you're too emotional. And how do you place and how do you say that sometimes it's not the emotions? Yes, there are people who are too emotional, but this can happen to anyone.
Yes, of course, we all vary in terms of our capacity to deal with the challenges in life. Expressing yourself, sometimes you are referred to as being too emotional, and yet you need to express yourself. The women express themselves a lot more. They are socialized to share their problems. Men often want to look cool-headed and calm, and yet inside it's emotional turmoil. And you have to give the impression that I am okay, I can manage. And it is also seen that if a man goes for external assistance, it's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
So the boiling takes place within until at a point where you break down. But the problems can be seen in behavior, withdrawal, excessive alcohol use, anger management issues. Then you know that somebody's not doing fine. But it's hard to get the men come out. But I think one shouldn't worry about people being negative and criticizing you for expressing yourself. I think you need to cry out for help when you have an issue.
Yes, and that cry out of help that you mentioned sometimes can be silent. So what signs would someone have to look out in a friend? Because there's this student who passed on at MOOBS earlier on this year, and there were signs from the things maybe he was posting to even just the body language. So what signs do you look out for maybe a workmate? You may not talk to them on a daily basis, but how do you tell this one something's not right? I
think we have seen, you've also mentioned the posting. When you look at posts that people make, they kind of reflect the feelings inside. Sometimes it's, I've seen that a lot on the profile statements that people make. Somebody chooses only negative statements, and while others have very positive statements and beautiful pictures smiling, you only select the negative. It tells you that there's pain inside. It's not very easy for them to come out for help, but somewhere they are crying, and those are the tears. Withdrawal and complete shutdown is a sign of depression. Somebody, stops reaching out, stops talking to others. Others, it is alcohol, and increased consumption of alcohol. Others, it's emotional outbursts, and called for outbursts. All of a sudden, somebody just throws a temper tantrum. Quite a number of changes in terms of behavior and also the physical outlook. Yes, because of loss of appetite, loss of weight, due to depression, all those just changes that are visible, physically visible. You need to look out for those as well.
As you were going through that explanation, I was thinking of my status people. My friends have been looking at their statuses, and I think about 80% of them need to come to your office because I have seen their statuses. They are not very, very positive. But besides them not being positive, when you look at social media these days, is it a place that has pushed people to being in a certain psychological state, because now everything happens on social media? People are trying to keep very many happy on social media, but internally they are not happy, and you keep seeing different posts of people pretending to be something they are not. Does that psychologically affect people?
I think so. Social media is good, but can also have its downside. Sometimes people want to give different impressions of themselves. Sometimes it works against you. Some members can be hostile on groups and very critical and do a lot of harm to vulnerable others. Though, of course, you can also seek help and support through the social media. You present your problem and you get very useful advice as well from the media. So there are those good things and there are those problems, of course.
Like everything has its good and bad sides. The cost. Do you think that it's one of the things that is holding people back from seeing a psychiatrist or getting psychological help?
Yes, definitely. Psychological services are not very cheap. In Uganda, we have a sliding scale, definitely, for people who may be really needy. It can go down to 30,000 a session, and then it ranges between 30,000 to 120,000, depending on the location and the service, where it's being provided, and the type of client. But traditionally, services in Africa have been provided under the NGO arrangement, where the therapist works as a counselor in an NGO, earning a salary, and clients are able to access, the poor can access them through the NGO arrangement. I think that's very workable for us in this country. But though we have psychologists in private practice as well, And those who don't want to queue, go in public places for services, can go see the counselors in privacy.
Okay. And one, as we talk about the cost, a number of people would think that maybe when you go to see a therapist or a psychologist or a counselor, it should be like a dosage. I should just go for 3 sessions, it should be okay. Yes, but what level do you say, maybe these people are now taking money from me, because a number of people will say, I feel fine, I should be done with this session by now.
Yes, I think it is unethical to hold on to clients if they are done and they are well. On average, about 3 sessions should be adequate. If the person is simply experiencing a normal life problem, stumbled a little bit and needs a bit of support to get back on track. Apart from those patients who are severely disturbed and require extensive therapy, those with severe mental health problems, but usually about 3 sessions could do. But it would be very unethical to hold on to a client because he or she is paying and you want to keep them in therapy for the purpose of
for someone that has probably been watching a lot of movies and series and watching our friends the Bazungu go and see these therapists, give us a quick look at what, let's say, the first session would be like. Is it me talking to you, telling you all about my problems? Is it me crying, breaking down, or throwing a temper tantrum like you said before? Is it just you asking questions and me answering?
I think it's not just about you, the counselor, asking questions. Usually it's an introductory kind of session where you get to know the client, introduce yourself and what you do, and then allow them to open up and they tell you their story. They express their concerns and their emotions so that you make an assessment of what their problem is. Usually that's the first session. We may not go deep down into resolving the issues, but it's just getting to know what the problem is and building a relationship, a rapport, building trust so that the person can eventually go deep into the experience. Many clients may not tell you everything in the first encounter. It is a time when they are also trying to check and see, am I safe? Is this environment safe for me?
Person?
Yes, to talk about my dark secrets. So ultimately, after building a rapport, the second session might be more productive, where you go down into the person telling you exactly what the details are. They may be allowed to cry and express their emotions, throw their tantrum if they choose to, and feel a lot better after expressing the emotion.
I feel like there's a friend of mine I know that I've had a feeling for a very long time that they need to see a psychiatrist, but is one person that I think you would struggle so much with, because I can picture them walking into your office and saying nothing.
Yes, just for a correction, psychiatrists or psychologists, psychiatrists tend to see those with the severe mental health problems, and the psychologists may see people basically with the normal life problems. So it's often good to make an assessment, how severely disturbed are they. But if you're talking about them not being able to express themselves, they are likely to be experiencing depression. When people are depressed, they are withdrawn and they say very little. But it's a beginning. You can talk to them and encourage them to open up. And once they open up, you get to know.
Creating a relationship with this kind of person should be one of your hardest jobs.
It's a challenge, but eventually you will be able to break through. Yes.
So as we wrap this up, Doctor, for someone who has been listening to this conversation, watching, and maybe they're nodding and saying, maybe I think there's something wrong.
I think I need a session.
And maybe it's a session, or maybe I need to change within myself.
Yeah.
Mentally, a switch needs to be turned on. What would you tell them?
I think almost all of us have psychological problems. No one can say that they are completely free of psychological problems. But if you feel a sense of distress in your life, maybe because of interpersonal relations, maybe you have difficulty making decisions, difficulty adjusting to life and the challenges of life, feeling extremely angry or feeling worthless, feeling low and useless, you probably need to talk to somebody. You don't have to be experiencing an extreme mental health problem, because most people think that to see a psychologist, you must be completely shattered.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's regarded to be an insult if somebody told you to go see a psychologist. But even in experiencing stress is an issue for you to see a psychologist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Paul Nyande, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's a very, very good insight on us. We need to come to your office, I think, many of us, and we'll probably look for you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Paul Nyande joining us this morning for our Tech Note session, and we've been looking at emotional safety at workplaces and with ourselves as well, as because it's not just workplaces. You move from home, go to your workplace, and then doctor, before just one small one before we let you go. We've been looking a lot at workplaces, homes.
Yes.
Homes, relationships.
Yeah, sure.
People are dealing with things differently there.
Yeah.
If how does Rita here notice that, my man, I think, needs a check?
Yes.
Or my children need a check.
Of course, it's the same kind of symptoms that we have seen even in the workplace: withdrawal, anger management issues. Somebody does not want to interact with members of the family, starting arguments, and it could be a child. All those are
the doctors will tell you that you need a checkup, a full body checkup. Let's say twice a year. Do you feel that a human being needs to go and see a psychologist at least once a year? Or
well, yes, I think it is essential that you talk to somebody. Many times you may not really have to go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, but you could talk to a friend who is very supportive. Okay. So many times we're experiencing counseling informally from our friends who are
our bosses,
compassionate. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Paul Nyande, psychologist, joining us this morning, talking about emotional safety at the workplace, and emotionally being safe and in a good place as individuals as well. That is for our Tech Note conversation. Thank you very much, Doctor. Have a blessed day, and thank you very much for blessing our morning today. Morning at NTV continues right after this.
Megatalk Voice Bundles. With Airtel Megatalk Bundles, you get more minutes to talk more. Yes, more minutes, more talking on Pakalast daily, weekly, and monthly bundles. Get 30 minutes for only 1,000 shillings, valid for 24 hours. And for only 6,000 shillings, you get 225 minutes, valid for a whole week. Or a mega 2,000 minutes for only 30,000 shillings, valid for a whole month. Yes, more value, more minutes, more talk with Megatalk Bundles. Dial *149#, select your preferred Megatalk bundles on Airtel, the smartphone network.
Sensitivity is